Rodney in January when we were down in Colombia for the U23 Cotton qualifying for the Olympics. Paraguay was down there. He wasn't part of that team, but he was a player that we knew about. So as we watch these games, we spend time watching other players that, again, not all of them are able to go to this event. Not all clubs allow their players to go. So we knew of him, we watched him, and again, the more we watched him, the more we liked him. Obviously, he got more time with his club team through the league games, through Copa Libertadores. So really meaningful games in difficult circumstances. So for us, monitoring that and seeing how he reacted on the field, what impact he had on the game, those were the things that we look for. His qualities as an individual, but now how does he deal with the game, and what are his technical qualities? What's his mentality look like? So those were the first drivers, and I think again we just continued to monitor him, and then obviously as we got to meet the player, I think you see somebody that's extremely humble and focused and hungry. He's still a young man, so he has this real childlike demeanor where he's jovial, and that's what I think again is what you love about young players. There's this unknown, but he's played 60, 70 games as a 19-year-old and in real meaningful minutes, and that's something that I think meant a lot to us as we narrowed it down on Rodney.
That's great. Thank you, Josh. Claudio, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think, his qualities, his strengths are getting into the box, as Josh said, and, all of our attacking players will have different qualities, whether it's, unbalancing a defense and making a final pass, running by players, 1v1 qualities. And his strengths are that, and also running into spaces. So he'll be on the receiving end, and it's a skill. He has a hunger to get into the box, and that for us is something, especially as Josh as a coach, continue to work on. He's going to fit into our system and playing in different positions as well. And he works really, really hard. As Josh said, he's played already in Copa Libertadores. He's a young player who's already been put in really tough situations. Having played over 70 games at his age is tremendous, and gives us great confidence that he come in, adapt well. Of course, it's very important. Every player who comes to a new country, you have to help them adapt, but we're confident with his maturity that he's going to be able to do that, and then on the field be able to flourish.
Perfect. Thank you, Claudio. I'm going to turn now to Mark Turner from Last Word on Soccer. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, gents. This question is, we'll pitch it to Claudio. Obviously, Josh, feel free to pitch in as well. I think either of you could tackle it. So congratulations on your first signing. My question is really more broad strokes in relation to the team. So as you're thinking about the identity of your Austin FC team, the DNA, if you like, what should fans be expecting in terms of the characteristics? What are the things you're looking to bring to this first iteration of the team on the field?
Well, yeah, I'll start first. I think it's important that we have a well-balanced team, and that's going to be our challenge as an expansion team. And I think, while of course it's exciting to focus on attacking players and make a difference and score goals, we need solid players in defense who can also play well. We need the right distribution of age as well. We need some experienced players, as we're talking about Rodney today, 20 years old. He's going to become a better player with players that are, in their late 20s and early 30s as well. So, as we build the team, you're obviously filling in positions and specific profiles of players and what we want players to do in certain positions. But at the same time, you need to always be thinking about, the experience, the type of personality that someone brings to the locker room. And I think that's very important in any team, anywhere in the world, in any league. And so it's something that we're very focused on, and Josh and I talk about. So, as we move forward, start putting the pieces together. Today is an exciting one, an attacking one, but at the same time, we need to make sure that, we talk about this all the time, that all the different positions, we do need, specific profiles, but we need to add the right experience as well throughout the squad.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Phil West. Phil, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Congratulations on the signing, and was curious a little bit about his international play, where he projects in terms of getting senior caps. I mean, obviously, there's players like Christian Paredes and particularly Miguel Almiron, who are from the senior national team, who have had some levels of success, obviously, in MLS. So if you could address that a little bit.
Yeah. Josh can add in after, but what I would say is that is absolutely one of our shared goals as a club, together with Rodney, that he makes it into the Paraguayan national team. So that is exciting for us, and especially for Josh, and I'll let him answer. But that, when you have a player, we mentioned it before, we talked about, a player who's hungry. Well, that's what he's hungry for. He wants to put on his national team jersey. He's been very close to it and was trending in that direction. So, and I'll hand it over for Josh, but certainly an exciting goal to reach as a player, and for us as a goal to help him achieve.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. And I think when you're looking at these young players, you have that idea of how you can help them develop. And again, for myself and our staff, it's that responsibility. We see that potential in him, and I think it's a matter of how we can control his environment and utilize our ideas and our identity of how we play to help Rodney. And I think he himself says his goals and his objectives are to play for the national team. And not that he spends a lot of time talking about it, but it's there and he knows it. And we talked about the types of players that have already come from Paraguay to our league and have done really well and stayed, or done really well and moved on. So he's very aware of those things. And again, it's this humility and this hunger that he has. And again, I think he's 19, 20 years old, but some of the things and the commitment level that he has, whether it's a starter or a reserve, if it's in Brazil or if it's in his domestic league, it's a real responsibility. And I think that shows his willingness as a player to compete, but also now for us, when he comes into our environment, it's helping him learn, and it's giving him more tools so that when he does get his call-ups and he does have those opportunities, that he's prepared. And we look forward to that and being a great resource for Rodney.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to turn now to Arch Bell. Arch, over to you.
Okay. Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I guess a question for either one of you, Claudio or Josh. You both alluded to his performances in the Copa Libertadores earlier. Is there a specific moment, a specific match that really got your attention? Because, I mean, it's one thing to play in the Paraguayan league, but it's quite another thing to go into the Lions Den and play like a Corinthians or a Palmeiras in a big Copa Libertadores game. Was there a moment from a big Copa Libertadores game that really got your attention, or a particular play that I don't want to say convinced you, but like really helped sway your decision?
I think those games absolutely help when you play at the biggest stage in South America, and you see him compete. Certainly it isn't one play because you want to see a whole body of work, but there's different little things that you see about the player, but his attitude overall, because they're playing some big games on the road and you have to defend and fight, and you're asked to do that as an attacking player in many games in any league around the world. So when you see his commitment on that side as well, whether he started, whether he subbed in, he was all in for the team. And he was impactful. He was a threat in terms of on the counterattack when they played on the road. And but when he played against those teams, he wasn't scared. And of course, that playing in those games, those environments certainly help, when you're scouting someone like, and leaves a great impression.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to that. I mean, that nails it. I mean, that's exactly it. It's the body of work and watching Rodney in those instances, those environments, combined with the fact that you're watching him in his own league as well, which provide different challenges and different types of opponents. So as a starter, as a reserve, he does find ways to be impactful, and it's on the left side, it's on the right side, it's playing as a second striker down in Brazil. And then there are things that excite us about him, and we also have to keep in mind he's a young player, so we have to be aware that it's not always going to be perfect, and he's not going to be on this straight climb to the top, but he's got tools that we feel good about. He's got a mentality that excites us, and for what we want to build here, he's a very exciting first signing for us.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to come to Bob Ballou. Bob, just before we do come to you, anybody else that wants to ask questions, please get that hand raised in the chat function using that participants button. I don't see too many other hands at the moment, so if anybody else wants to ask a question, please get your hands raised. Bob Ballou, I'm going to turn to you from CBS in Austin.
Hey, Josh, Claudio, thanks for the time this morning. Josh, obviously you need a guy who could put the ball in the back of the net, and he's proven already a little bit on the big stage he can do that. How excited and encouraged are you on that front, and what are your expectations for him as a goal scorer?
Yeah, hi Bob. It's a good question, and again, I think a big part of what we like about Rodney, is the his age and obviously what we project him to do. But again, at a young age, he's shown the ability to score goals in different ways. How he arrives in and around the box, his left foot, his right foot. Again, combine that with the idea of how we want to play. We feel good about how he can produce, and for me as a coach and for us as a staff, it's now enhancing his qualities and bleeding them into a game model and teaching him the other ways that he can influence a game and have an impact. And that's something that's going to be near and dear to us. And obviously, in order to get the best out of Rodney, that's what we're going to be challenged with. But always good to have goal scorers, and we hope that he comes in and contributes right away. That's obviously the goal.
Right, thank you. Mark Turner, back to you. You have your hand raised again.
Yeah, thanks again, Tom. Isn't going to coach Wolf. I spent some time around the Colorado Springs Switchbacks and saw their scouting process and could see how challenging that was on a good day. I'm wondering, what additional challenges did COVID present you and Claudio in regards to scouting, and what kind of adjustments did you have to make in your process to overcome that?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of scouting becomes obviously how you can identify players, but it's also about the information that you can gather about players and kind of their background and what their lives look like, their developments look like. So for us, it's obviously we have a director of scouting with Manuel Junco, and he has an unbelievable network of people that he can get information from and bounce ideas off of, and as does Claudio, and as do I through our contacts within the league. But I think the scouting aspect changes a little bit with the idea of the final pieces. Usually you want to go in person and meet the player and watch them live. Given that this is what the world is right now, scouting's still done from afar, and it's probably the more resourceful way to do things. So the missing piece, the big change, I guess, from what normally happens is the expectation to go meet the player. And I think that's the one thing that's been taken away. But mind you, we've had a number of these Zooms with players, so it's another avenue to get in front of the player and have discussions and obviously look the player in the eye and have a good conversation, candid conversations.
That's great. Thank you. Chris Bills, back to you.
Yeah, I guess this one's for Claudio. I've seen some reports out there that it's a $2.75 million transfer fee. I was just wondering if you maybe could confirm whether that's the case, and I guess short of that, what position he'll fill as far as like the roster mechanisms, whether he's a young designated player or I don't know if you could shed any light on that.
Well, as far as the transfer fee, we're not going to make a comment on that, and
Okay.
we're also not going to disclose his player designation at the moment. There's various initiatives that he could fall under, and as we build a squad, we'll evaluate that moving forward.
Okay. Yeah, and then I think there's sort of an expectation out there from some people, like in the fan base, that there'll be a splashy signing at some point, and I think a lot of people sort of look for that, fair or not, with a first signing. I wanted to give you guys a chance to maybe touch on that aspect of things, whether you expect there to be a recognizable name or two at some point, and kind of explain, or not explain, but, I think that Redis is, his resume kind of speaks for itself. His the videos are out there, but what's exciting about getting a young player in like this, and there's other examples around the league, but I just wondered if you could touch on that splashy versus young, and where you guys are sort of looking to build on that front, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Josh and I, when players are always presented to us, and they are, our first thought is the impact they're going to make, and how they're going to help us be successful. So that's how we're wired from the beginning, which means that could be a player that is a recognizable name, or a young player, someone within our league, and so we have to be very open-minded about the players we bring, but again, that's for us the most important, and we'll keep exploring the different options. I think to the previous question about COVID, and also where we are, as a reminder, we obviously don't start playing until next year. So part of this also, and why this works out really great, is that Rodney continues to play at a very good level, at a high level, before he comes in with us, and that's not something that's that easy to figure out at the moment, given how many leagues are in flux. So signing a player now and then just placing him somewhere isn't as easy as people may think. So that does create some hurdles in signing players, especially big players. At NYCFC, we signed David Villa, and he spent 6 months where he didn't play much. He went to Melbourne, and he really struggled the first few months of the season because he wasn't used to being off. And he was probably as good as any professional I've ever seen in training. He had a personal trainer and was, training like an animal, yet he didn't have his sharpness. So, part of this is to make sure that our players arrive, fit and sharp and ready to help us as well. So again, a lot of these players that are presented to us, and that we may sign now, there's just a challenge to kind of find somewhere they can play for the rest of the year. So that's why that also plays into any decision, whether it's a name player or a young player. But going back also to you, Chris, yeah, we'll explore players. It needs to make sense. They need to be, really committed, and also make sense from the budget side as well, from our investment. We just need to be responsible with every signing that we make. And that's my job and Josh's job to do. So, but we're open to it. We've explored it. We'd have conversations in the past with agents of big players. But again, everything needs to come together and make sense for us to make sure that whether it's a big name or not, that he's going to fit into the club.
Thank you very much, Claudio. Steph Manacero, I'm going to turn to you now. Steph, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good morning, guys. I guess this question is kind of for both of you. How does a signing like this kind of just build momentum and create excitement when it comes to signing other players potentially from South America or elsewhere?
Claudia, let's start with you on that.
Well, we certainly officially, wake up as a club and we're able to make noise out there. And there's no doubt that there's going to be, a knock-on effect for us. And, people are going to see and learn about us even more. And there's a lot of excitement with all the players that we've been targeting and speaking to, and agents as well, and scouts about Austin FC, our stadium, our training facility, our amazing city. So, we've been really, excited about, our opportunity to attract and recruit players. But when you can say we already have one to share with your next targets, it's even better. So, little by little, I think we've said it before as well in previous press conferences, that the majority of our signing will be towards the end of this year and into next year. But we're going to continue to explore the market and continue to add to our team. But today is just that first player that, again, as I said before, the fans can envision running on the field and, wearing our uniform and scoring goals. And it's very exciting.
That's great. Thank you. Josh, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's the first of many. And it gives a small indication of where we're at. Obviously, you can't predict, what that first signing was going to look like, and obviously we will continue to look for future signings. But it's a dynamic, exciting player at a great age, and we think has great potential to develop within our system and the way that we want to play, and the potential for him to grow and to have a long career here in MLS is something that we hope. And if it's beyond that or bigger than that, then that's also our responsibility. So good to have a high quality first player, and now we'll look to get some more.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Karen Harper from Estonia. Karen, hi. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for entertaining my question. I just wondered if, without getting too intrusive, of course, wondered if there's anything you can tell us about him personally, about his family, if he's going to be, family with him, anything about his, personal background that you can share with us to kind of bring him to life a little bit more. Anything you'd be willing to share about his personal life with us?
Josh, let's start with you on that, particularly in terms of how, as a personality, you see him fitting into the team structure you want to build.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about Rodney is his seriousness about playing. And then when you talk about the game, his engagement is very real, and he enjoys talking about soccer. When we were talking to him, it was as some of the games were starting to come back on as well, and just being mindful that these games were taking place. I'm asking him, is he watching these games? And of course he is. He's watching the European leagues when they're starting up. So on a personal level, he's very committed to his craft. And I think that's what we enjoy most about him. He's jovial. He's got such a kid-like smile and demeanor, but when he plays and when he talks about the game, he doesn't seem 20 years old. So that's something for us that's certainly very appealing. Very serious, very focused on his game and getting better, and then there's being a kid and the lightheartedness that comes with that. So we have to foster that and nurture that as well, and recognize that. And I think that's part of how you build out your roster and support that with experienced players and hopefully younger players as well. But super kid and very humble and hungry, and again, he'll provide more insight as he arrives here, and he shows us who he is in person as well. So it'll be good.
Claudio, let's turn to you on that, and particularly in terms of kind of how important personality is as you're starting to build out that roster for an expansion team.
Well, yeah, I think the off the field part's important, and you touched on that in your question. And he's younger, so he will not be coming with his parents or living with his parents. Will be on his own in a new country. So, that side of it's important. Making sure he's welcome as a club, as a city, our supporters. I know everybody will, but it's certainly a different dynamic when you have a player, married with kids, who's moved around a few times and speaks English, versus someone like Rodney, who's gonna, need to be, like I said before, provided the support to adapt, to learn English. We're gonna have a professor as well right away, so he can start learning. But that side of it is equally important, and that's something that we're aware of, and from day one we're going to make sure he feels comfortable and welcomed, and I know we will, and that will help him, as Josh said, have that smile on the field like he does, and be able to perform and enjoy himself on the field.
Perfect. Thank you. John Cooley, over to you, John. John,
sorry about that. I had unmuted. Okay, so how is Austin FC handling the COVID-19 crisis as it moves closer to opening day? Are there fears that the stadium won't be ready? And is this pandemic slowing down other aspects of the franchise's development?
John, you know what? I'm going to step in. I'm actually going to take that one just because I do want to focus today on Rodney Redes and on the transfer. Just so we're clear, and I can tell you this, and I can give you we can have a kind of separate conversation with club leadership about the stadium. We are on schedule with the stadium. We are on schedule to be playing our first home game in spring 21. I'll let Claudio and Josh talk to how COVID is affecting transfers and building the roster. But just in terms of that stadium question, we are on schedule for that. So, Claudio, I'll turn to you in terms of the kind of roster build.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not been able to watch players play, first in our own domestic league and around the world has impacted some of our scouting. But everyone's dealing with that. And, we're excited to see that MLS will be back starting up this week. We just had to adjust to the transfer window. The transfer window now is going to be 3 months, sort of in late August. So that's slightly different. But again, now we know that. And there are players that certainly, I would say, are certainly their values dropped a little bit and it's certainly shaken up the market somewhat. And, teams have taken a big hit financially. So all that is still shaken out around the world. But hopefully everyone just gets back to playing as soon as possible. And there's so many leagues and, my family's from Argentina and in South America, the COVID situation is very bad at the moment. And, I don't think people realize how bad it is compared to what it was in Europe, earlier in this year. So they're certainly, concerned about just their health and safety first. And then hopefully the leagues can get up and running again soon, because it means obviously so much at that part of the world. But, I think we're adjusting it to it a little bit, but hopefully everything gets back to normal. We can watch players play and we can, scout them in a normal, as near as normal way as we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Ruben Pizarro, good morning. Hola. Over to you, Ruben.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Josh and Claudio. Well, I have two questions, one for each. Claudio, we have not watched much of the Rodney playing, but if we can make a comparison with another player that looks like his type of game, who we can match with. And for Josh, are you bringing players with skills to adapt to a way of playing or your method of playing, or you are choosing the players and making adapt to your type of game?
Josh, go ahead.
Sure. I think first and foremost, we have a way that we want to play, and I think, from a structural standpoint, what that looks like when we have the ball, what it doesn't, what it looks like when we don't have the ball. So there's certain qualities that we're looking for in players, and positional traits is what we talk about. So that's the first way that we go about identifying players, and having an identity and certainly a style of play. And then how can we find players that have those qualities already and show the potential that we can work with them as well and make some of those qualities better. So I think that's the starting point. And then again, as you bring a player into market, their period of adaptation, their learning process, we will learn more about the player, and the player will also show us some things that maybe we didn't know about them and other ways to use them. But we've done a good amount of research on Rodney, from the personal standpoint to the soccer standpoint. And again, he's 20 years old. He's going to come in with eagerness and freshness and some qualities that we think really resonate with the way we want to play. But we also understand we have to help develop him. He's not a finished product, and in order to get him to some of his goals that he stated to us, that's what we look forward to, and we take that responsibility very seriously, as well as promoting and projecting our club. And it's a great first signing, and we're excited about it, and obviously we look forward to getting him here.
Ruben, I think you said you had a second question. Do you want to ask that as well?
I had one for Claudio, but I have a second one for Josh, if he allows me.
Sure.
Percentage of experienced players and young players in your team.
Yeah, I think Claudio's, and myself, we talk about this at length. The balance has to be right, and players like Rodney need experienced players around him. They need the role models inside the locker room, on the field, that are illustrating a proper pathway, the proper professionalism. I don't think Rodney will have a problem with any of that, but it's what you want to build is this environment and this culture. And that starts with the leadership, with Claudio and myself, and that bleeds through our entire organization. And I think that's the starting point. And balance on the field is going to be critical of having the right amount of internationals and the right domestic players, the right ages that are 18, 19, 20, 21, and then obviously having the 27, 28, 29, 30-year-olds. So those are very serious things that we talk about, and will always be part of the filtering process as we set out to sign players.
Just a question for Claudio. I have not watched much footage of this player, but who other player we can compare with in order to understand his type of game?
Yeah, it's hard. I don't like comparing, players or putting them under any kind of pressure. But I would say, players in our league that really run in behind are a handful in terms of their presence in attacking areas and running in different areas. And you see, players like Josef Martinez. Again, he's much further along in his career, but a player, Rodney, who loves to get into the box, to score goals. And again, that is something that's very important in our game and the way we want to play. And, we're going to continue to work on that. But he's a player who can create chances and score goals. He can be very, very, dangerous in counterattack situations when we win the ball in transition. But he could also run in around the box, create things out wide. And as Josh mentioned a few times, really, I think what we like and, believe this is quite common now in the modern games is players that can adapt and adjust and play in different systems and different positions as well. And so Rodney can play as a second forward, I think as a 9 as well when we need to. He will, primarily play in wide areas, but he can adjust, and he's done that for his club, and that's something that as well is a good quality to have as a player.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Phil West, we're going to come back to you, and then Nick Barbaro, you're up next.
So Claudio, you had mentioned a little bit ago that MLS's back tournament is starting on Wednesday. So just kind of curious about what you have planned in the way of scouting, if you're going to do that from afar, if you're going to send a rep to Orlando, and looking toward the expansion draft towards the end of the year, what kind of things you might be looking for.
Yeah, we have one spot down there. It's been reduced recently, but yeah, and we're trying to get down there. Josh will be down there watching games, and we'll be watching from afar, of course. And you're able to see, of course, the individual players, but also the teams in terms of how they play. You'd expect that they'll use more of the roster and more of the squad, so we'll be able to see some of the players that maybe in a regular season environment wouldn't play as much. So that could be an advantage for us. But I think, like everyone, really, we're just excited to see the games and playing, and it'll start our planning for the expansion draft as we move forward, and all those are starting to be set as far as transfer windows and working towards after the Orlando tournament, how MLS resumes is still being worked out. So again, we continue to sort of wait eagerly on the sidelines to watch games, to watch players, and we look forward to the games just like everybody else.
That's great. Thank you. Nick Barbaro, over to you.
Yeah, I was curious about timing. I gather the Paraguayan league is under hiatus right now. Will he be playing for Guarani again, and when is he coming up here?
Yes, he stays at Guarani to the rest of the year, and then he'll join us in January. So, which for us, as I mentioned before, is very good as he continues to play and keep fit and develop. And, they're in good competitions and have a good squad. So it really worked out for us in terms of him being able to stay and play there and have consistency. And as I mentioned before, not potentially loan him to another team where he has to start over or just, play for 5 or 6 months knowing that he'll come here. So, a lot of those aspects in terms of, as I said before, in signing a player have to be considered, because, in this case, it works out really well that he can stay at his club and join us in January.
So they will be restarting?
They're waiting. They're just waiting as well for when they're going to start as well. They're training. They're doing their training, but they haven't yet started up.
Perfect. Thank you. Tom Marshall from ESPN. Tom, over to you.
Hello, Claudio. Hello, Josh. Congratulations on the signing. I was just wondering, 5 years ago, say, a player like Rodney Redes, I was just looking at a few stats, and he scored a few goals in the Libertadores. He might have held out for Europe or possibly come to Mexico. And obviously since then MLS has got more mechanisms to bring in such players, and we've seen that in other teams as well. I'm just wondering though, with the COVID-19 crisis and everything that's going on, the way it's affected pretty much every single league in the world, how has it affected the relative strength or attractiveness of a club like Austin and a league like MLS in the international transfer market, and specifically with these kind of younger types of players?
Well, I'll answer that first. I would say I think the COVID has slowed everything down around the world. However, it's not impacted the interest of players coming to MLS. It continues to increase. Young players from South America, prior to COVID, and I believe after as well, will continue to, be intrigued by MLS. And as you could just see it by more and more players coming from South America and around the world to play in MLS. So, it's like I said before, it's certainly there's a halt a little bit in the market. Some clubs are still trying to figure out internally how they're going to move forward with their squads, and there's young players as well are a part of that. But for someone like Rodney, like many players in South America, you have to try to time it right to bring them in, because if you do wait another 6 months or 12 months, their value could triple or quadruple in certain leagues. So, you have to time it right. We felt with Rodney, he's played over 70 games. He's 20 years old, and he's already been playing in important games and is developed as an important player in his team and an important team in Paraguay, who was very hungry for his next step. So for us, it's just the timing of it made sense. And again, probably haven't mentioned to it, but his enthusiasm to want to come to Austin for us was great to see. And that's something as well for our fans, that he's so excited to come. He mentioned in one of the calls that he can't wait to also be the first goal in the new stadium as well. So he's so happy, enthusiastic to come. And so it's just great to see. And going back 5, 6, 7 years, it was different. It was more difficult to recruit players to MLS. And that's really a strong sign of the direction of MLS.
That's great. Thank you. Mark, the next question from you, Mark Turner. Mark, you have your hand raised for the next question.
Hey there. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, gents, this is in regards to the USL. Obviously, they're getting ready to resume their truncated season. And so we talked earlier about the challenges of COVID and how that impacts scouting. I'm wondering how much having live domestic football is going to be of value to you, and how much you look at the USL for opportunities to graduate players who you think are on the cusp of making MLS, who you think could be of value to your roster.
Yeah, we watch USL, and we will have a sort of best players list from that league. And there's been players that have made the jump. Mark Anthony Kaye, one who jumps out. So there's good talents who develop there and a good level. There's also some young players, and some of the USL teams attract some young players. So we're scouting as well. And I think, though, in most cases, though, they will be very good squad players. We wouldn't be looking at USL for a starting, 11 player. But certainly there are players there that have sort of rebounded. And I can think of many players that, sort of back at NYCFC where we brought and contributed to our squad. And so, it's a great place for players to get minutes and play. And so we'll be scouting in the lower leagues as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think the last question that I have on our hand raised is from Michelle Sanchez. Michelle, hola, good morning. Over to
Hello. You. Good morning. Hey guys, this is for anyone who feels free to answer it, but I kind of want to go back a little bit and talk about how this conversation with Redes was and how long the process took to kind of, did it take like 6 months that y'all spoke to him, maybe even less, with COVID. But what was that conversation like? I know you've touched that he's really enthusiastic about coming to Austin, but what are his goals? Like, what was that conversation? I'm a little bit curious about that. I don't know if y'all touched on that.
Yeah, Josh, you want maybe take this
I
one.
think again, I think the process, took time. Obviously, I think again, I mentioned previously that we probably got more intimately involved with watching him and really dialing it in January, February. Conversation probably didn't happen for a couple months. That COVID kind of came in and kind of put everything at a standstill, and then for us, it's seeing what's happening and seeing opportunities as well. And then once you have conversation with the player, you learn a little bit about him and what his world's been like thus far and what his expectations and what his goals are going forward. And he's had a level of success there in Guarani, and the next challenge for him is a possible move. And I think his ambitions of being with the national team are clear. And I think that's something that he recognizes, and he's seen players come from Paraguay to MLS directly or through Argentina to MLS. And those players some of them are still here. Some of them have moved on. And, I think he views this as a really great opportunity and certainly a next step that's very exciting and an opportunity that he was excited by. And I think that's when Claudio talks about, and I talk about his jovial attitude, his just enthusiasm and that youthfulness. But make no mistake, he's a young pro, and he understands what it looks like once he's on the field and what the day-to-day is going to look like. So I think that combination of those two things it brings you a player that you can't wait to have in your environment. And I'm learning Spanish, so my ability to connect with the players is really important. And we'll have people there also to help our Spanish-speaking players learn English. But I think my responsibility, my staff's responsibility, is we need to make those steps in engagement for Rodney and the players that are coming that are Spanish background, and make them feel comfortable and try to give them the best platform to have success and to feel comfortable is a part of that. And then their confidence and obviously their understanding of what we're trying to do will develop over time. But it's hasn't been a short process, but it's a process that takes place all the time, and COVID kind of threw a little bit of a delay in it, but we're happy we got it. We got everything done, and look forward to getting them here.
That's terrific. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this to a close. We've nearly run an hour. I want to thank Claudio Reyna and Josh Wolf for their time this morning. I want to thank every single one of you for joining us today. I do have a lot of one-to-one requests, which I'm going to be working through with Claudio and Josh this morning. So if you have put in that request, sit tight and I will come back to you with details on when we can get those fulfilled. You should all have the press release. If you have any issues with that, please let me know. But yeah, on behalf of Austin FC, many thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Claudio and Josh. And I hope everybody has a safe and happy Monday. Thank you very much. Bring this to a close now. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Guys.
Thanks, everybody.